Uh, so we were just talking about pet.
Maybe that worked. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry about
What?
that.
Thank you. What happened?
My logistics fell apart for tomorrow. I was buying a wheelchair converted accessible van, and it was either pick it up today or maybe wait till sometime next week. So I got a willing volunteer to drive me 100 or an hour and a half, about 100 kilometers away, and I said, "Let's go now." And I got back as fast as I could.
Well, thanks for coming and meeting us. At least you got in. I was worried people couldn't get in, but yeah, it's all good. So we were just talking about programs on the pet. What was your favorite game back in the day? Like we just talked about Lunar Lander and Space Invaders.
I don't know my favorite, but my first was actually probably a combination. It was either Mouse Maze or Dam Busters.
Oh yeah.
Oh, please inform me about these.
And there was also Artillery. So Dam Busters was a very rudimentary green screen pet program where you would actually maneuver or basically time the dropping of a bomb on a dam. So it was very 8-bit all the way, and not nothing as far as graphics, just using the graphics available. And Artillery was very much the same way, except you had variables and where you aimed the gun and how many, I guess, bags of powder you put underneath it, and that depending on how you zoned yourself in, whether or not you were able to hit the other artillery piece across the mountain, which of course was a triangle. And Mouse Maze, which I remember when we first loaded up, we had no idea what it was. It was essentially you walking through, and it just showed you with the lines a mouse maze, and you had to then key forward, backwards, right, left, or whatever, and try and find your way through the maze.
You gotta get the keys.
Of course. There was the only mice we had back then were probably in the shed.
Huh. That's cool. What about Space Invaders? Did you get into that at all?
Oh, of course, because Troy Hacker from
Whoa, what a name.
Richvale Telecommunications wrote the best, I think the best one I ever saw was the best pet Space Invaders, and it even included all the secrets of the real one in the arcades, where
Whoa.
if you click the fire button 7 times before you shot the alien ship, you'd always get the 300 points or whatever it was. And then the next one was you had to count your clicks. I think it was like 22 later. So, oh yeah, to see that on a machine as we had, right? And what, when 32K, and of course it was all written in machine language, was just, amazing. Like the other Artillery, Mouse Maze, all of those things were just, they were straight basic, as far as I know. But Troy Hacker, I have no idea where he ended up or what he ended up doing. But I would, when you talk about legends, which I don't really consider myself in any way a legend, and a great variety, when you just look at a young kid who I think somewhere in the world became legendary in the technical world, Troy Hacker is probably the guy or one of the guys.
Is he still around?
I don't know. It's been 40 years.
Yeah, no, I think you know what? It's sometime in the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years or so. I think I saw some mention of him on some news thing, and I don't remember what it was about.
But he had
I don't think
the perfect name. I mean, the kid's last name was Hacker. Are you kidding me? I mean, who thinks of that stuff?
Right.
And that was his real name.
What a name, huh? And you know what? I think that's pretty. It was common, right? For Space Invaders and Pac-Man, those two games were probably the most cloned games that I could think of, right? Because Space Invaders and Pac-Man. Can you name any other franchises that were cloned as many times? Or
Way back to Pong.
Pong?
Pong,
Yeah.
Pong.
Pong?
Yeah, the
Good,
Pong
good,
game.
Okay, okay, good.
Absolutely.
Frogger?
Yep.
Okay.
I see a comment there, Frogger, for sure. Boy, oh boy, what was
What about
another one?
Defender? I would
Yeah.
imagine that Defender would have played well on a pet.
I know it was definitely on the 64 and things like Galaga. Oh, what isn't it? Asteroids on the Vic?
Oh,
I mean
yeah.
that is, to me, that's, I mean, if I had a Vic now, I mean, to me that's
Don't
like
you mean a Mega Race?
Mega Race. Yeah, Mega Race. Sorry. I mean, to me, that is 8-bit cocaine, and I broke that habit, sadly. But I'd be in counseling if I still had that available to me.
Sorry, there was a comment there from Mr. Bussy, and I missed it. I just glanced and I said, "Oh, that would look like something interesting." And poof, it was gone.
Jim Orlando has made some great
Frogger.
games. Okay. Cool. Send a link. I've got.
Oh, there's another comment there about Jim. Oh, from Jim Orlando has made some great games for the pet in recent years.
Yeah, I've heard that name. I have heard that name. Oh,
We might have lost. There he is.
I'm here. Oh, geez. Come on. I was going to take notes with the AI, but it says I don't have permission, which is BS. It really is BS.
AI equals BS. Put that in your basic program.
Right. You don't have permission. Gemini can shove it. Okay? How about that? Shove it, Gemini. The AI is telling Dr. Obsoleto he doesn't have permission. Well, suck it. Great. Okay, Busey sent it. Yeah, because as I was saying earlier, pet invaders, alien invaders, and space attack. But Troy Hacker, what was the name of his version?
Oh. I think it's just Space Invaders, wasn't it?
I think there were many variations on.
Well, like I said, there was pet invaders and alien invaders and space attack.
I know it's hard to see. It's really hard to see. Oh, there he is.
Nice.
There's the man.
The boss.
That's the card or the handout from his memorial service.
Oh, wow.
That happened September 22nd, 2007.
My word.
I can't believe it's been that long.
Holy cow.
I see we have a Mr. X is in the crowd.
Mr. X is back.
Yep.
So, Bradley Brothers,
Yeah.
I would like to read you a poem that I wrote from me to you both.
Oh, heavens.
In a lab on the hill near a busted gazebo lived a curious fellow, Dr. Obsoleto. He mumbled and muttered in jargon outdated. His gadgets all sparkled, fizzed, and detonated. He wore a top hat with a steam-powered dial and rewound his watch every once in a while. Progress is peril, he'd cheerfully shout. Give me gears and some levers, I'll figure it out. He typed up reports on a Commodore PET with a screen that would flicker and crash on reset. He printed with pride on his dot matrix printer. It jammed every Thursday and hissed in the winter. To send out an email, he dialed slow through a modem that screeched like a banshee in woe. He'd say with a grin, the future's a threat. We're fine with basic, no need to reset. He cured common cold with a mustard poultice and charted the stars with a wheel from a solstice. His robot, named Dr. Obsoleto 1000, ran on molasses and once taught a seminar to empty classes. He backed up his data on cassette, tape reels, and calibrated clocks with old bicycle wheels. Cloud storage is sorcery, risky and vague. I trust only floppies, and that's not a plague. The town simply smiled and let him be so. That peculiar old genius, Dr. Obsoleto, for though his machines were museum grade strange, he never once feared a software exchange. So here's to the Bradley brothers. Long live the keyboard, forever not quirked. He'll keep his old code and his vacuum tube glow in the stubborn old heart of Dr. Obsoleto.
Lovely.
I have nothing to compete with that. No.
Well,
Richard, when did you get involved with TPUG? What was your earliest memory?
Well, it would have been going to a meeting at what's that school called?
the side high.
Side High School, where I mean, literally, the place was full.
Lawrence Collegiate.
Collegiate, yeah, Lisa Collegiate.
Lawrence.
It was full, and included with people like John Easton, who really is a legend of TPUG, just saying, and seeing things like I don't remember if Butterfield was at the first meeting I ever went to, but just having we went through the Bees, the Bennetts, and the Bonnycastles, and meeting people like Carl Hilden, who at that point I think worked for Commodore. What was Paul Higginbottom was often at those things. And various people who were in leadership. Who? I missed that.
Who? What?
I don't know. But Steve Punter being at meetings like that. Sometimes even the guy who wrote Paperclip, Stephen Douglas. Not very often, but some. And some people from my high school, Lloyd Spire was another guy, and various other people. And I mean, as I said, and I remember this at the memorial for Jim. I mean, we were the nerdliest of nerd high school kids there were to have. And he didn't care. I mean, he could teach anything. He could teach anything to anybody at any level. He was very gifted in that way. And I think he was absolutely definitely one of many reasons I would come back to meetings and really got, involved more deeply. I mean, let's face it, man, for a while there, and I don't remember the time frame. I mean, my mother worked at TPUG.
You know what? I would think that Jim Butterfield would have been the perfect computer science teacher.
Well, he left Canadian National Telegraphs, or maybe it was CNCP by then, and he was a trainer for them.
Wow.
And that's right. And I remember this. He left when they used to be on Front Street in Toronto downtown, and he left there when they moved out to Islington and the other end of the subway line to do full-time Commodore guru type things.
Wow.
Because he didn't want to add those 2 hours a day to his life of going over to the CNCP offices over at the ship center at Islington and whatever, Bloor. Yeah. And my dad worked for CNCP, and at some point along the way had some very, minor exposures to him. But they crossed.
I'm pretty sure it was still. I'm pretty sure it was still CN telecommunications at that time.
So we know that Jim Butterfield, he founded TPUG. He was very involved in Commodore. How much, and he wrote the manual, right? The C64 manual, among other things.
Oh
But
yeah.
how much of an influence did he have on the new models coming out?
Mm. I don't know. I don't quite honestly. I
Well,
don't think Commodore
he
would have
was
listened
no,
to him anyway.
no. You know what? He got. I don't know how, but very early on they realized he was a great asset, and he was sort of um, a consultant with them for a long time. Like when we went to that thing at the museum and seeing some of the equipment that was there that was his, there was stuff there that was earlier than anything else.
Wow.
That and certainly, actually, he had the great misfortune of being the one to introduce the +4 and the 264 and the C16 with great fanfare, only to find out that they were. I mean, they were fine, but they were not what people wanted. But I don't know. He was. I'm not sure if they paid him or if they gave him things. If they sent. Well, I mean, you remember Richard? You had when we helped him move. He gave you what he thought was like the third or fourth Commodore 64 ever made.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
Well,
Who
you've
has,
got
wait,
that.
who has that? Who has that?
Well, I think Dave's got it now.
Well, you know what?
I think I
It,
turned
it
it over.
yeah, it had some issues, but it's now actually in Sweden.
Oh, well, there you go.
Where?
Some years
Wait,
ago.
wait. Where in Sweden?
I don't remember the fellow's name.
Oh, you sold it?
Yes, and now, of course I regret it.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
if he regrets selling it, I regret giving
Oh
it to
my
him.
gosh. It literally has. It's the third serial number from the.
It was.
Well, but no,
I think it was 1,003, and they
no, it
started
was no, it was, it was not.
11,003. What was the number?
If you go to there's a site where you can register your 64, and I think there were two or three that didn't have serial numbers; it just had paper stickers on the back.
Okay.
And for a long time, there was some other guy who had what was the oldest with a real serial number until I came along and registered. And it was through that that the guy in Sweden found me. So, but it was not 00003. It was not. But there were things because I did some videos on it and took some pictures of it. And it's funny, the first version of the board, there was A, B, and C, and everyone would think that A was the rarest, and B was next, and then came C.
Right.
But it was not the case. It was a B, and supposedly B was the one you can hardly ever find.
Mm. So B is before A.
Really?
James Innes. Yep.
And I don't know. Why did you sell it?
Oh, I had a weak moment.
I mean, I don't know. Well,
Well,
you could
I
say-
still have. Remember at the same time, and I'd forgotten all about this. He down in his basement was this machine, and I remember seeing it demonstrated at a TPUG meeting. It was the Commodore machine.
Oh,
Remember that, Richard?
Yep.
It was an 8032, and it's funny. It was not all that long ago, in the last couple of years, that I refound it in the basement here, and I didn't even realize what it was till I opened it up and looked and said, "What is all this?" Now it doesn't. It at the moment it's not working. I haven't dug into it, but like I figured it was just, oh yeah, they just changed some ROMs and did some stuff, but oh no, no, no. It basically is as elaborate in there as a 3-board Super Pet.
wow.
And probably a one of, excuse me, about a one of a kind.
Just hang on a second. I'll be right back.
Uh-oh.
So, Richard, were you doing any while Dave was doing stuff for Run? Did you do anything for Run or any other publication?
I wrote some reviews for the TPUG magazine. In fact, I think the last time we did something like this, I pulled one out where I'd written a review of an old acoustic coupler that was available for $28 at Active Surplus in Toronto. So I wrote some stuff for the Toronto Pet Users Group, like the TPUG magazine or whatever, the Torpet. A couple of things here and there, but one of the major differences is, in the midst of all this cool stuff and playing with 64s and Amigas and all the rest of it is, my first son was born when I was 22. He is now 37, and I have 4 kids. So when TPUG kind of moved off Avenue Road, and so did I, a lot of my time, it was no longer possible to give an hour to the club without giving 5 hours to the club. And I didn't have 5 hours to give. So that's kind of where, it's not that it wasn't close and dear to my heart. It's just our hearts were no longer close together. So
were you helping? Were you doing the BBS with Dave?
Oh yeah, sure. I've got.
What was that BBS called again?
Bradley Brothers Bulletin Board System.
BBBS.
You got
it. BBBS.
Oh, Richard is up and moving.
Is it raining where you guys are?
No. Oh no, that's just a. Here is. I think this is them. When we first got into it, yep, we bought ourselves boxes of business cards. There it is. You can see we only ever bought them once, and you can see how many I used. The box is just about full. However, it does have. I don't know if it's readable. No,
I can't read it. What does it say?
It is the Bradley Brothers Bulletin Board System. Richard Bradley, system operator, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And at that time, we had 4 different ones running at 416-487-5833, 416-481-8661. And those were message boards. And we had 2 dedicated just for programs and downloads at 416-481-9047 and 416-277-9991. And I have lots of these cards available.
That's cool. Did you guys ever archive that BBS?
I think right now what I have is on the 9090 that's not working.
Oh.
So I'll have to see about trying to figure out how to get it working again.
That's probably not going to show it.
But
So
remember also.
Do you have it saved on that drive?
Oh, I think everything's on there. I think it's not the drive that's bad. I think it's the 9090s were a very elaborate sort of thing. And many circuit boards and things worked and things didn't. But Richard, you remember also, when it wasn't just that TPUG moved off Avenue Road. It had fallen under the spell of Louise, who moved it off to Duncan Mills or something other.
She did.
And it stayed there for a while, but the rent was like crazy. And I remember at a meeting, oh, well, I just didn't understand. So it was just foolish to move it there.
There was, I think the excuse made to move it away, and I trust the inevitable or the endless memory of John Easton on this, was that at one point there was a break-in into 1912A Avenue Road where some stuff was stolen, including something of ours, actually, that was on loan to the club. And that was used as the emotional reason why we just can't stay here, because it's been, violated in some fashion, by somebody breaking into it, who actually, I'm pretty sure we know who it was, but that's another story. And of course, in the interest of libel and slander, I'll just, before I say anything about anything, it will be my opinion, because my opinion is my opinion, not necessarily a fact.
Nice disclaimer.
Hey, if you cannot be sued for libel and slander for what your opinion or your beliefs. If I accuse somebody of doing that break-in and saying, "Oh yeah, I know who did the break-in," and name them, that's an accusatory statement. If I say, in my opinion, a guy named Chris, who was a teenager at the time, broke into the office and stole stuff, well, that's my opinion.
Your opinion. I'm just checking out BUC's link. It's pretty cool. It's got copies of a lot of these games. I don't know if you guys check it out. So Dave was going to tell us about some of the scoundrels.
Oh,
Well, Louise was one of the scoundrels, in my opinion, who decided that she was the one who was the big thing about, oh, we must move. And I remember when it was determined that the rent was outrageous, she said, well, I just didn't understand what net meant. And also, I mean, there was times like orders would come in and they weren't getting filled for
there
months.
always seemed to be a continuous agonizing problem of getting renewal notices sent out in a timely fashion to members, because a lot of people were happy to renew, but a reminder was often very helpful. And let's face it, a TPUG membership was not a huge expense at the time, but there seemed to be times when for months and months and months renewals would not get sent out unless it was the night before an executive meeting, when then they could say, oh, those have been sent out, but they hadn't been sent out for 4 or 5 or 6 months in a row. So there were definitely some challenges in the structure with regards to and again, it's like there wasn't a model for users group that anybody could follow. TPUG was just kind of like made up on the fly by a bunch of initially well-meaning people, I think, and then some of the groups kind of split off into wonderful ideas that either didn't happen or cost a whole lot of money. And then there was power struggles. I mean, let's face it, and I'll say this as a fact. I mean, Louise Redgers fired my mother from working at the Toronto Pet Users Group. So,
oh yeah, that was really one of it was kind of like, and here's the thing. The reason it worked so well for as long as it did when she was there is she didn't need to know about the computers. She came up with ways to have everything work efficiently. And there were some other people that were there that knew nothing about computer things, but they would do the orders, process the thing, get it, boot, like things, the turnaround was very short. If you ordered something, it was in the mail very, pretty much a day or two after the order had arrived. And it was all that was because as mother has said, she was good at administering things and making sure that they ran well. And then of course, Louise was not. I remember once.
We should get her on this.
Yeah, there was a time once when supposedly, she'd assured everybody that things weren't happening, and then some people from the board of directors went in and did a quick, as what they called it, a raid to see what was what. And in I guess the safe there was months and months and months of orders that hadn't been filled.
I believe they changed it to an incursion.
Oh well, that was their way, which of course means raid. That was their way of saying, "Oh dear."
So there was a lot of, what? As I have found out, unfortunately, through my life, if more than one person is working in any given place, if there are at least 2 people working, and sometimes even one, there will be office politics. There will be organizational politics. There will be other distractions that, when you really look at that, take away greatly from the goal of the organization by who, power and control, right? And I have to say, with actually the utmost of respect, as I see John sitting there, John Easton was never, ever, that I ever remember, one of the people that lost focus based on anyone, trying to power play or control anybody. John was a very, very stable voice of reason that I'm sure he still is.
Well, quiet, let's say.
Anyway, but there are others I cannot, say that about. And again, I mean, there were power struggles over the magazine, power struggles with the late, what's his name, publisher,
Bruce
Beach, and other, where in fact the Torpet was no longer the Toronto Pet Users Group magazine, of which he owned the name to, and like very other, just power and control type things, which even led to, and maybe someone's got one, the infamous magazine where the cover, it was probably one of the last Torpets, where the cover was printed and it had a picture of the office staff on the cover of the magazine. Right. And it was the wrong cover. Pictures had been sent to the publisher and the wrong direction had been given on what picture, and it wasn't proof. And the magazine went out with this picture, but it wasn't a bad picture. I can't remember all the people who were sitting at the desks in the office, but it was not the magazine cover that was supposed to be. And that was, I remember specifically, that was the day that Chris Bennett said that is the last magazine that Bruce Beach will ever publish for TPUG.
So who owns the TPUG magazine name now?
Oh, well, right. The TPUG magazine, I'm sure TPUG, but the Torpet probably would still, I don't know if it belongs to anybody, but it would have belonged to Bruce Beach. And of course, Bruce Beach passed away a few years back.
Well, it was one of those things where, the club gets started and then they, they wanted a newsletter. He said, oh yeah, I'll do that. And somehow it became his thing rather than the club thing.
Well, as I say,
hang on, John's got one.
Well, I got just a note the other day. They're going to do another version, another edition of TPUG magazine coming out.
Oh wow!
Yep.
They wondered if I wanted to write anything, but heck, I didn't write things. I just gathered things. I was the editor for a while.
Yep. I wonder where is Lucas? He would know more about this.
That was Lucas that sent me a note about it. Yeah.
So is it true? Is it true that once the 64 came out, there was kind of a schism, the split? Well, Dave calls it the split.
Oh, I mean I don't think there was a big fight between people. It's just that's when more meetings started to happen, and that's when the club grew, because there was a lot of people who got the 64, and a lot of stores would say, oh yeah, you buy this and then you join this club and they'll help you with everything. But I don't remember there being real fights between the different kinds of machine people. It was just a lot of it was people who sadly would forget the whole the vision of the club in general. And well, I mean, then of course there was the thing where TPUG magazine, they were like, oh well, are we a club or are we a magazine? And let's go spend bazillions of dollars and resources, and we'll put this on the newsstand, and nobody will know what it is, and we'll lose a bunch of money.
Wow,
that worked.
So wait,
a lot of money in those magazines.
Where did things go wrong with TPUG? Where was it one thing, or was it a leadership struggle? Was it a power vacuum? What was it? Obsoleto.
I hear voices.
I don't think that you can answer. I don't think you can point at one thing. It's kind of like, it's not like, Garden of Eden type thing. And, actually, I got a great joke about the garden. No, I don't have a great joke about the Garden of Eden. Never mind. But again, it's not like everything was ever the Garden of Eden. But at least at the beginning, there was, it was kind of cohesive. And yes, there were there'd be little election things. And I remember using a name out of the past, J. Allen Farquharson, who was rather loud, proud, and actually quite a brilliant guy. He left education and went into programming, and he had programs that even 3 and 6 month old could react to and interact with a Commodore computer, and various other things. But again, there was Jerry Gold. There was all the names, Bonnycastle, Bennett. What was the guy? I'm trying to remember the guy who was also another B. He was a library for the Vic or something forever. Anyway, there were all these people.
Bonner.
Chris Bonner, right? So, but then it kind of grew past the club stage, and then it was running the business stage. And, like in the biggest year of the finances, the income was $750,000, and the outgo, the money spent, was $754,000. So it was, I think, one of the things with the move, and they hired another general manager named Bruce Hampson. That was definitely those two things together. I think, and Bruce had nothing to do with the club, I don't think, much before. And I think that idea, or that management idea, proved to be not a fatal blow, but a definitely a negative impact in a lot of ways. And then I remember the one time there was a whole thing about we're going to have half of the executive board or executive committee dealing with local issues and half dealing with more U.S. and international, more far-reaching, trying to reach out better throughout the world outside of Toronto. And then, as it turned out, nobody actually wanted to work with the Toronto organization, the group. Everybody wanted to do, the international stuff. And that I remember sitting in a meeting, and I was elected I don't know if I was 18. I was a director of the club for a while. And I remember saying, I said, well, this is not going to work. If you're trying to split the board into two groups that want to do two different focuses, when nobody wants to do the local stuff, you're like, we're done. Like, that's just not going to work. Like, we need people to work on the local stuff. And we had so many meetings. There was East Side meeting, West Side meeting, 64 meeting. I don't know if we ever did we have Vic actual meetings? I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh, I think there was.
Every once in a while. And then, different, certainly presentations of any and all, right? Como.
Oh, look.
And,
There it is.
TPUG.
I was looking for that picture tonight, and I couldn't find it.
there it is.
December 84.
What kind of work process or program did you use to edit the magazine? Do you remember?
Oh my.
When I was doing the magazine, I was doing it I was doing it on a PC
Were you? Okay.
using
Oh,
Corel.
really?
I used Corel,
Oh, Corel Draw, Corel Word.
and they had a whole publishing system.
And John,
Yeah.
were you John?
I
were
was
you doing
editor.
editing?
I was editor when it was a newsletter, not a magazine.
Oh,
After
I
the
like the
magazine.
newsletter.
Okay. Well, I'm just looking in here on December 84. there was the Brampton chapter, the Central chapter, the Commodore chapter, the Commodore 64 chapter, the Communications chapter, the East Side 4th chapter, Hardware chapter, Machine Language chapter, Super Pet chapter, Vic 20 chapter, West Side chapter. That looks like all anyway in December of '84. That's what's in here. So there was an awful lot of and they had and this was giving the fall winter schedule of meetings, and typically most of them met once a month.
Yeah, but when you add all those, when you add all those up, when you're looking at once a month on that list, that meant 2 nights a week. Every week there was a TPUG meeting somewhere.
Wow.
Whether
Very
it was
active.
like Comal, Vic, whatever. Well, like it was they were a variety of kind of everywhere, but some were real big. I mean, those first ones when they were at Leaside or York Mills. We do some at York Mills. Yeah, we did do some at
York Mills.
Some at Earl Hagen. I mean, there were 500 people in a meeting. It was like not quite standing room only, but it was uncomfortably close seating. And the monthly disc was going out by the hundreds on that night.
Wow.
Just I think it was $5 a disc back then. If I remember. And there would be a big box of the monthly disc, and then a bit more of the library, and people could order stuff, have stuff brought to meetings. I mean, it was busy. And of course, again, you're talking about that magazine coming out. That's over 40 years ago. I was 19. I'm 59 now. And just so you know, so's Dave.
So these discs, who's got these discs?
Well, a lot of them were archived on the CD.
I have the CD.
And you got them.
Yeah, a lot of them. But there are some that are missing, right?
So I've heard, but I don't know what they are.
There are missing discs. Yeah, I jumped on that CD when I got it from Joe Palumbo. So I said, yeah, I want that. And then
I don't remember and you know from the CD, and when you look at the structure of the CD, how many hundreds of discs are on that CD? Because you got to remember those discs are 170K, right? Unless they were, of another format. But there was, I don't know, was there 500 discs in the library? Would that be close? Yeah, that's a lot of things times 170K, but it fits nicely on a CD.
Wow.
Or memory stick. Well, I mean, you got to remember, and these things were made. They were copied on 4040 drives. Right? There was a room, and I don't know if there's any pictures of that room, where how many 4040 drives were on that. There was the library, the disc copying room. I don't remember how many 4040s.
16.
Yep. And
4 rows of 4.
Yep. And I remember when who was it had the magic automatic disc copy? Was that a Troy Hacker program? I think it was. You could load into the 4040 an auto copy thing where I think you put the disc in drive 0, and then when you close the door on drive 1, it would just go. And it would copy the whole thing. In fact, there were people that alleged that it would copy copyrighted discs. I don't know that it ever did or not. But anyway, it was really and fast doing that. So that's, I mean, again, there were hundreds and hundreds of discs being churned out in a week into mail orders or getting ready for meetings, all of that logistical stuff. But looking back at your question, quite honestly, and I kind of think of it, the thing that really blew it up was creating the TPUG magazine and getting rid of the tour pet. Because the resources that were put into that magazine were massive, and the staffing. How many people worked at that? At one, 4 people, 5?
I think.
Just-
Yep.
So,
Oh yeah,
if,
no, it was. You know what?
if we had stayed with the Torpet for all of its pimples and imperfections, it wasn't costing us like the staffing of 4 people.
Oh no, because it was done by the Beach family.
Yep. So,
Yeah,
But-
but it was their thing. They were. I mean, they were putting in all the risk, but they were also. I guess they. I mean, they were making something off it. And then there was the coffee tree that the son ran and made money off of. And anyway, just what it had become an irritant to some who decided that having this club thing that really wasn't part of the club just couldn't be.
and then it comes back into the whole power and control, or lack, or assumed lack of control. And yes, there are probably a lot of people that got, envious of the fact that there was, in fact, some money being made for the efforts that they were putting into it, right? But
And remember you said that there were these discs at the show, at the meetings that you guys sold, right? And what were on these discs? I said, yeah, it's on the CD that I have, but
yeah,
what were on it? Games, applications?
anything and every. It was the monthly disc. Oftentimes, it would have some relationship to who was presenting that month. If they'd give the stuff in advance, if it wasn't that, it would be on the next month's disc. So it was pretty current as far as stuff that was coming out from Butterfield, Bonnycastle. You'd get, I remember the infamous machine language Paul Higginbottom input routine, like all kind. Just like it was not categorized other than it was the monthly disc. It wasn't like CU1 or CU2 utility
And
programs.
also people would mail things in to say, "Hey, here's the latest thing I did."
Oh, cool. Okay, nice.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so you'd see stuff from readers and members, and
Oh yeah.
Butterfield would write a program and put it on there.
Butterfield's tax program had to be the
Yeah,
most
yeah.
popular program. It was rudimentary, but for a basic person with a couple of T4s and maybe a couple of little deductions, you could basically, it was as, maybe not as good as TurboTax, but for its day, nobody else could do their tax on their home computer like Jim's program. Nobody.
Yeah, those instruction tapes with Jim Butterfield. The hour long, several series about the Commodore 64. He picks up the machine and he's just like looking at it and explaining it like no one I've ever seen in my life.
He had a gift.
You know what I'm talking about? Where he's like holding the machine and this guy can like look through it and he can see the chips and the addresses. And
Yep.
That's interesting that you said Commodore saw him as an asset, right?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure there was some compensation going on there, but he got everything in advance because he probably was writing all the manuals for the stuff, or at least contributing significantly to them, because I don't think for a lot of times they knew exactly what their engineers were putting in a box. They needed the guru to, dig deep. Like that Commodore 64 programmer's reference guide. I mean, that's got to be in our world. I mean, that's probably more popular than the King James Bible.
Yep. It was good. I think they had a lot of people involved in it. But I do remember when we did go out to that Butterfield day at the museum, somewhere in the midst of things, there was a Commodore business card, and it was his. and I
That's
don't
right.
remember what they called him. I don't know what his title was, but definitely they realized that he
Well,
was a good resource.
it should have been GURU,
Mhm.
but it was probably product consultant or something along those lines.
Would you guys also ship? Oh,
Okay,
Stefan's
question
got a
answer.
question. Stefan wants to know: did you meet Jim Butterfield?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
Sure.
many
I
times.
had to move.
They
When I
helped
was
him move. That's like an honor.
yeah, when
Did he
he
move my couch? Yes, sir.
he moved from what was it, Brunswick Avenue? No, what was that street? he was on?
Ontario Street, he was.
Well, he moved
So
to. Did he move
that's
to
where he
there?
went.
Yeah,
Um,
he moved to Ontario Street. At the time, being a young guy with a van, and he knew it. He just phoned me up. He says, "Well, we're moving, and can you and your brother come down?" And I remember, I think my oldest was with us. I think Kyle was with us, and Susanna was there. And we stopped like any good Canadian moving day, and we had pizza.
I remember though that the reason he didn't want to move,
No,
but his wife had decided that her daughter was going to have a nice house.
yeah, they had a rather old,
There we go.
small, nothing,
Oh yeah.
nothing structurally wrong, just an older house, and they moved to Ontario Street. And the thing about Jim was too is, and my son, who now runs a computer business in Halliburton called Tech Medics, I mean, Jim would talk to my son, and my son, I think when he was he 3 when he won an Amiga 500 at the World of Commodore, maybe. So when my son was getting into technology stuff and the Commodore stuff and the Amiga stuff, all of that stuff, I mean, Jim would talk to him, answering all of the dumb questions that we asked him, 20 years before. And you would never know that Jim had answered these questions before. He would sit down with a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, and he would talk to people with absolute attention and respect, like nobody I've ever met.
And he had
Yep.
right, and he had patience, right, with these children or with
Infinite,
anybody,
infinite patience.
right?
And,
He would be like, "Oh, I have to go and leave. It's tea time."
my son to this day holds those memories when we would go and talk at the expert table
Right.
at the Commodore thing. Or in fact, he would answer we would occasionally meet him. And I mean, hey, if it wasn't for Jim, when I first started working at what's now Toronto Metropolitan University, I would never know the best thing in the world to eat was fries and chicken gravy from KFC. Because to him, that was decadence. And he
Wow.
told me about it. And he brought them to me one day on my lunch. He says, "You gotta have this." And you know what? It was good. But
Yeah.
and I have no doubt between those influences and the fact that I worked in an IT world that like now he runs a PC server network computer place in Halliburton, and I have no doubt that Jim has as much an influence on him doing that as I ever did.
I know. Also, at one point,
That's cool.
and I guess I kind of stumbled into this because I'm not sure he could get in touch with you. You were busy, but he had an old Chevette, and mostly he didn't have cars because he did the TTC and he rented one, but he did have an old Chevette. And at one point, he somehow got in touch with me because he decided it was time for it to go. So I said, okay. And I'm pretty sure I went down there probably with the station wagon and your Tovar and moved it, brought it home, and decided on, what, see, it was a GM, of course. So there were some things that were interchangeable. So basically, took off whatever was interesting enough. I know the tires ended up going to some guy who had a car, but of course we didn't take them off immediately. But what ended up happening is we got it all figured out, and then figured out where we could take it, and we didn't really care about getting anything for it. We'd taken anything off if it was good. Took it down to the place in the middle of the night, took off the wheels and tires, left it by the gate with the ownership in the thing and a note knowing that, they'd get their forklift out and that would be that. I remember Susanna came out and hugged it goodbye.
Well, I remember Vicky, and I don't remember if she sent an email or I think it was an email about us speaking at his memorial, or maybe she said it. It might be on the tapes, and she said something along the lines of when we were young and in high school, because Jim would let people phone him, and we would phone him, and she referred to the fact that when we were in grade 9 and 10, we often did little more than grunt when we phoned. But the fact that we had somehow matured into actual speaking human beings in time between then and when he passed is why she invited us to,
That's nice.
tell our stories.
Wow,
of
that
him.
shows how much they thought of you guys. That's wonderful. How highly they thought of you.
Anything they thought of me was 1% of what I thought of them. And I mean, I didn't know Vicky that well because Vicky was, I guess she was a teacher. If I
No,
remember. No,
no, she was a secretary at CNT.
oh, she was. Oh, okay. Oh, how did I mix that up? Anyway, you get older. But I mean, really, it was. I mean, Jim was the guru, and she was, she was always there. But back to the days of the original, like I wasn't around at the beginning of TPUG. I think John was. Lyman Duggan and the first group of people that started to get together. I mean, it was more a social thing, and I'm pretty sure Vicky and some of the other spouses of, including Lyman, I mean, they used to get, like little snack trays and other things together when they would meet in their, little tiny meeting rooms or somebody's basement or wherever they gathered. But let's face it, when it was hitting 500 people at a high school, yeah, there was no snack.
I also remember hearing the stories. I'm not sure if it was from Jim or Lyman that when the first meetings happened at Leaside High School, they would, after the meeting, the two of them, there was some little bar right across the street from there. And they would go in there and drink some of the club's money.
Oh,
Well, they put in a lot of time and effort to get it going. So
they funded the time.
they would have a drink or two on the club. I don't remember the name of the restaurant, but it was literally, there was
Right across the side of Eglinton.
Yep.
In the little strip mall there. Well, without those guys, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it and talking about them. Although, interestingly enough, I mean, Jim was the guru and just the incredible mind of it all. But I remember visiting Lyman in Florida and him saying, I never learned how to program in BASIC.
Yep.
Here's one of the founders, who he was dealing with marine radios and all kinds of Marconi, all kinds of other endeavors, and he was certainly into it, but he was into it, but not into it to learn how to program a PET.
So fairly early on into that whole thing, he got transferred to Florida.
That's right.
So he wasn't around.
Why did you go to Florida?
His company, it was Marconi, and they said, "You're going to Florida." And he was like, I think it was something like, "You're going to Florida in 2 weeks." He said, 4 weeks. And they said, "Okay."
Wow.
That's negotiations.
And poof, he was gone. So he was around at the beginning, but he wasn't around for very long because he's still in Florida.
Yep. Every once in a while, I get your message from Lyman.
Yep. Jim, some people would say to Jim, "Gee, why don't you, take over and run the club?" And I remember what Jim's reply was. You know what it was, Richard?
I don't think it was repeatable on public radio.
No, it was. No, it was. I'm not that stupid.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I was
no,
gonna ask you guys, before I forget, I wanted to ask you, do you have any recommendations for like Petsky editors, text editors from back in the day of the pet? Petsky.
Now I know what you're saying. I hear the words. I am
Oh,
59.
I'm sure there must have been, besides the big ones that people use. I'm sure there were a number of them on the TPUG disc. But because I pretty much look when the first thing I ever handed in school, we didn't have a word processor. I just wrote it with a whole bunch of print statements and printed it out on the 2022 printer, handed it in, and then it was rejected because it wasn't there.
You know what?
That?
I survived high school by being able to shrink the margins and add the spacing, even on an old 2020. So I could hand in stuff that was 300 words shorter than it was supposed to be, and they could figure out how to count the words. But boy, it looked neat. But it had wide margins, and
margins, double space.
Yep, and boy, oh boy,
Anyway,
it got me.
Do you remember though, Richard? It was Herb Worthington, the first person I handed something into, and he said, "Oh, I can't take this. It's typed. It's what whatever." I said, "Well, yeah." Anyway, apparently, I said, "Well, I don't see why not." And apparently, he checked with the office, and the office said, "Yeah, no, that's fine."
So,
So
I don't know why we took 2 years of typing in high school.
well, and now, of course, I'm sure if you tried to hand something in handwritten anywhere, they'd say, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, they wouldn't.
But I didn't have a word processor. I put in line 10, print, quote, and then I would write out the first bit, and then I put in line 20, print, and that's how I did the first word processing. I would just type it and print it. When I got all done, I'd read through and edit it and make sure it was fine. And then there'd be a line at the front of the program that said, line 5, open 4, 4, CMD4, and away you go.
Yep.
And it would print.
I do remember. I mean, the first thing I ever used was as word processor was WordPro, and I don't remember how. It was definitely not purchased. I seem to remember Steve Putter gave some unlocked copies to some of his friends, and then they shared them around more than he ever wanted them to.
Oh, I'm sure.
But Paperclip was superior in many ways, other than those damn keys that you had to plug in the joystick ports.
Well, even eventually, Batteries Included decided it wasn't worth doing that.
Yeah, but it took a while.
Oh yeah, and then of course there was the consultant key that wouldn't fit in with the paperclip key.
That's right. You can run them both, so they had to shave it.
That was on the 64. I've never looked inside the ROM of the paperclip ROM, but
so from what I understand, WordPro 4 for the pet was one of the earliest full screen pet word processors.
Oh yeah, yes it was.
And it supported text wrapping and Petsky characters for 40 and 80 columns.
Yep, sounds reasonable. Yeah.
So WordPro 4. And what about Commodore? Fun. What about Commodore's built-in line editor?
Built into what? You mean just how you would program?
Yeah, into the pet.
Oh,
type.
All right.
Hit return. Enter it in line 10. 4n equals 1 to 5,000. Yeah.
And then in Compute magazine in the 1980s, they wrote about Pet Edit, a type-in text editor supporting full screen editing.
Oh, I do remember that name, but I don't think I ever had it.
Pet Edit. And then there were Homebrew. Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I just don't. I remember the name. I just don't remember hearing it. I mean, I never have it. You got to remember, we were in Toronto, so we had great connections for all kinds of stuff. But if stuff were made in, Pennsylvania or California or wherever it was, we didn't have the same illegitimate ways of acquiring unlocked software.
Wink, wink. Yeah, and then there were a bunch of other Petsky art editors that were homebrew, from what I understand. Like that were made in the demo scene of the time by hobbyists. And you could, and with one of these homebrew, you could use a joystick or a keyboard to move the Petsky blocks along the cursor.
Sounds vaguely familiar. I mean, because
And then-
people did do some pretty elaborate artsy things with the Petsky characters.
Like
Oh
what?
yeah. The best I ever saw was the picture at the beginning of the Star Trek game that was written by Dave Neal. He had this opening screen with the full what do you call it? The USS Enterprise created out of the characters. And the first time he brought that to a meeting and showed it, people audibly gasped when they saw that image on the screen.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
I mean the other things. Remember, there was the Commodore Christmas thing when the 64 came out, and it had some songs and some cute things. And it did use some sprites, but there were many of the things that were in the screens were things made with the Petsky graphics. Like there was somebody right. That's the one, the SX64 Christmas demo. Say, while we're here, does anybody of the many watchers have any questions? Anybody?
Yeah, sure. What questions? Jessica? Mr. X? Stefan?
Anything at all?
Don't be shy.
Comment.
Don't make me start singing. Yo, too shy, shush,
Yeah.
why?
Gotta turn the
It's
volume.
not really a question.
No,
I just want
I will. Oh,
I just want to
Stefan
let you all
says-
know it was hailing here in Chicago just now.
Whoa.
I swear there was a chunk. It was like a golf ball.
Oh
Uh-oh.
my. Well,
Yeah.
about a month ago, we went through an ice storm up here where I live in what's called Minden, Ontario. And if it weren't for my Starlink, I would have been totally. Our cell phones were down, power was down for 10 days. They couldn't even dispatch emergency services.
Wow.
So Jessica said,
question.
Busey said, I think Jessica ported Galaga to the pet. Is that true?
Do what to the pet?
I think Jessica ported Galaga to the pet.
Oh, Galaga. No, I didn't import it. I modified it a little bit. A friend of mine made a joystick adapter for the pet. It's called the Stupid Pet Tricks adapter. So yeah. So I was helping Jim port some games to use the adapter. So I modified the controls so it could use the joystick.
I see. Stefan asked a question. Asked Dave, why does he have so many pets? And why do you prefer the boring pet over the C64? Do you not like fun and games?
Wow.
Well, look, you know what?
Holy cow.
Yes, I'm not okay. I think the number of pets is, I think, 46. I think. But in terms of 64s, I have so many, I don't even know how many. I really don't. And I try not to get them. But as I was saying earlier, there was that thing where I sent Richard to a little place not far, and he had to empty out some of his van to get it all in. And I
guess that guy sent me a text message. You found another box.
Did Did you go get it?
I haven't got it yet, but I will.
Because, Stefan, this is Jack's pet. Okay?
So,
So
Look, I've got a lot of other stuff, but this just happens to be the pet room.
Millisoft said I ported Petaxian to the pet. Oh, okay.
Wow.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. Yep. Is that on this link that you guys sent me earlier? Petaxian, is it online?
Taxian?
So Busey sent jimbo.it.io. Is it on that link?
Is that a ported Galaxian?
I can't. Apparently,
It was-
Petaxian.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, nice. I look forward to playing it.
So
See-
where's another question? Oh, there's another question in there. But do you have a Pet 64?
Oh, that is a sad, sad story.
I know I
You know
don't.
what? You know what?
So, okay.
Some,
Do you-
some
do you have
I had
60?
some. I don't. Some of them, when we moved, some got forgotten in the attic.
Oh, dear Lord.
I kick myself
Oh,
every time I think of it. I think I had 4 or 5 of them.
oh no.
And
Excuse me.
when the house was sold, once they did their whatever they had to do to prep them, they were demoed with a big digger.
Well, you know what? I didn't even remember because I'm sure if I said, "Hey," because they didn't do the demolition that quick. I'm sure if I
Oh,
said,
no.
"Oh, you know what? I forgot something," they would have said, "Yeah, fine."
Yep, they would have.
Okay, so can I piggyback on Stefan's question for a second here? I recall
what's the
one of my conversations with Dave that at the time you started to use the 64, right? It wasn't like you ignored it. The 64 became popular, so you had your pets that you still use. But can you tell us about the time when the 64 came out and how you responded to it? You and
Oh, well.
Richard, yeah.
Well, I mean, I decided right quick that I was going to get one. And I had it hooked up. Actually, you know what? The original early 64s, they all had this funny, horrible flicker tube. And I didn't care. I was, oh, yeah, that's flickers. I don't care. But anyway, I had it hooked up to an old television set and got started on it. I remember I diddled around with some sprites and things. And it's funny because afterwards, it wasn't long before they realized that they could get rid of this horrible flicker. Actually, the funny thing is, every 64 flickers, it flickers in the color of the background color, so you can't see it. But originally it did flicker, and somewhere I do have my original 64, and it had a pretty low serial number, less than 10,000. But there's something wrong with it. But I suspect if I were to open it up and dig it around and figure it out, that it might even still flicker. But anyway, I got no, I really did get into it, and then actually, I mean, for quite a while, we did the 64 library for TPUG. So I would put together the monthly discs and other things, and gather things.
Yep. Well, the other thing too is we changed from pets to some of the Bradley Brothers bulletin board stuff ran on 64s because the conversion that you had to do to an 8010 modem to make it answer the phone was somewhat barbaric.
Sure.
But about putting a hot melting the case with a hot soldering iron and adding a hole to it and various other things. So the 64, of course, and I got a mosquito. The 64 you could actually get a modem that would you didn't have an acoustic coupler. So it would actually answer the phone. And then of course came 1200 baud modems and 2400 baud modems. And so we certainly embraced the 64s, but we were running a bulletin board on a whatever you call a bus card 2 plugged into an 8050 or whatever drives. or series of drives in order to have the storage. So we certainly were, into them. But hey, we had a small screen PET first. And hey, if the VIC had come out on time and it was delayed and
Well, that's
delayed,
what I was going to ask. I mean,
we're never going to get
but,
we're going to get a VIC 20.
well, that's what I was going to say, Stefan. With all due respect, you're skipping over the beloved VIC 20. So you guys were already into that, right? A lot of you guys were already on the VIC 20 bandwagon.
No, because it didn't come out on time. It was delayed by Commodore, and we ended up breaking down and buying a small screen PET. So
Really?
Yep. But we were just, we were impatient. I don't know. Were we 15, 16? We wanted something, and what we wanted wasn't available. So we ended up with the small screen PET, and then we traded it back in and got the Fat 40.
Yep. Okay, hang on here. There are questions here.
Oh.
Some PET keyboards have square pieces where you stick the keys onto and they crack. Are you okay? Are you talking about the chiclet PET? 'Cause like the original ones with the tiny little keyboards. You repair those keyboards.
See, Dave's got so many 64s, but they're covered up by the PETs.
Oh, the 8032 had this. You think about that.
So I've heard about Petra. Have you guys heard about that for the PET, like a drawing program?
Pet Draw?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have a copy of that.
Okay. And then there's a Petsky editor by Lemming.
Yeah.
You got
If I'm not mistaken, the Pet Draw uses the 80 by 50 screen mode.
Oh,
So it's like the
Stefan,
quarter characters.
Stefan's asking, Stefan, are you talking about the Porsche style 8032 or just the regular 8032? The keyboard was really low quality and the keys would stick when you pressed them. I had it on 8032 normal version. Gee, maybe I've never seen that because the ones I have. Oh, the keys he's describing, the ones I have, I don't remember ever seeing other colored things. And oh, wait a second. Let me think about that. So the keycaps themselves went on to the things that went up into the key were square. Yeah, but often they were stuck in there and glued in there.
So if you press the keys and it gets stuck, the key does not spring up again.
Well, I suppose I've had things like that, and that's often because stuff, when I found anyway, that accidentally stuff got spilled in there. So, I've taken keyboards apart completely down to, basically pulled off all the keycaps. And what I typically do, because it's usually that's when the stem is dirty, is I take Ziploc bags with hot soapy water, and I'll soak the keys and soak other things, not the things with the pads, but other things to get them cleaned up as much as possible. Sometimes I've even put some keys that get yellowed. I've stuck them out in the sun to try and get them better colored. Although that's more with other colored things.
Have you used Retrobrite?
I have not. I use the Sunshine.
Sunshine?
That and magic erasers.
Oh yeah, no, Magic Eraser does a wonderful job of cleaning things. It won't get rid of the yellowing though.
No.
The reason why I ask, have you done it, Jessica? Have you done any Retrobrite?
Yeah, I have. I wouldn't do it on a PET though. I mean, it would be hard to find a container large enough for one thing.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is my friend has a SH-101, which is a rolling synthesizer.
Oh
and
yeah.
he wants to use Retrobrite on it. Have you heard of people using Retrobrite on other?
Oh yeah.
electronics?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it
it's
should
usually
work.
cases.
Depends on the type of plastic, really.
Right. Okay.
But the technique I use, I have like a tub that I fill it with like water, like 50-50 water and like 1% hydrogen peroxide. And then I just leave
Okay.
that in the sun for like 8 hours.
Oh,
And it takes a little longer. Like some people
Oh.
use like a higher concentration, which can do it faster, but you could also like damage something. So I don't know. I like it. I do it's like a slow and steady kind of method.
but you got to take it apart. Yeah.
Well, last
Right.
year I decided I had the 64 that was really good, and so I took the top. It was one of the white ones. I took it out and I put it on a table out in the backyard. And I left it there for probably about 4 weeks, maybe more. I didn't care if it rained. I didn't care anything, 'cause it didn't have anything electronic in it except for the LED. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how much it
Wow.
changed. Anyway, I know. Yes, now that I'm just back to Stephen, it may be in fact that the keyboards in Europe were different. I just yeah. It's funny. The only keys I remember sticking are when something accidentally got spilled in something, or I suppose. I mean, there was always the springs in there. I never had one break, but I've certainly had things where you buy something and then you find out that some of the keys don't have the springs.
So yeah, in Nico, this is what I use. So it's actually 3% hydrogen peroxide.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
Cool.
3% peroxide, and then the same amount of water, and it's got to be enough to like cover the plastic and just let it sit in the sun.
In the sun. Wow. Okay. Thanks.
I did that with my A1200, and I noticed it's starting to turn yellow again. So
Yeah,
Oh,
it may not last forever, but it looks better than it did
thanks
because
for,
it was
yeah,
super
thanks
yellow
for the
before.
huh? Jim Summers. Oh, Jim Summers.
Jim
You
Summers.
see that question?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Star Sports.
So have you heard about ST2 pet? Maybe ST2 pet? You could transfer files, over via serial on the pet.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
SD2 pet.
Yep, I have one of those.
You have
Works
one?
great. Yeah.
Works great.
Yeah, it
Nice.
works great.
For which models?
It should work on any pet because it just sees it as a drive.
One of the first daisy wheel printer I ever had was something that was, I think the company was called Trend Data. And it was this big monstrous thing built into a desk, and it was totally like a serial port printer. And I guess somehow we got it hooked up to the pet. And we started, just for friends, we started printing resumes because it didn't look like a dot matrix printer. It looked professional. It was typed, and it was a daisy wheel. And one of our best friends who lives in Orangeville, we kept on, his name is Phelps, but his nickname is Filippo. And every time I did him a new resume, we added a number to it. So there was Filippo 1, Filippo 2, and up to, he actually got a job with a career based on Filippo 5 with, what's it called? It was called Consumers Gas at the time. And he worked a whole career there based on a very nicely written resume on a daisy wheel printer using a serial, I'm pretty sure some kind of botched together duct tape and whatever connected from the pet into this daisy, and came out with a really nice looking 2-page resume that got him a career, the career job he always kind of wanted.
That's
there's
cool.
a question here.
I'm gonna send you guys an online Petsky editor,
Ah, very good.
and
There
you
is
could do it. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I don't know. The second part of the question here, I sorry I missed that, and that was, do I like use the pets, or do I just tinker and fix them? And I suppose It's more fixing these days and trying to figure out what ails them and how to get them going again. But I certainly have been at times going through some of the old TPUG and other discs and looking at programs and playing them and tinkering on them and sometimes modifying them a little bit. But I suppose recently it's mostly been on checking them out and like as you see, I have a few, and I do have to go through and try and figure out what can be saved and what works and what doesn't. And like there are many super pets that somebody stole the super pet boards out of long ago. I don't know where they are. So it's and just sorting out the 8032. Anyway, I guess mostly it is taking them apart and restoring. But of course, once I have some restored, then I do grab some discs and say, "Hey, let's look at this." And usually, I end up on Space Invaders.
Space Invaders.
Going way back, I do remember the name Jim Summers. I don't know if I ever met him, but I do remember the name from those.
Does that sound familiar?
Stefan
Yeah.
asks, what is the chip that fails most in your experience? I had a broken 6502, and of course the bad RAM on the first pet board, 6550, I think. What
Oh
is
yeah,
the
on the
chip
first.
that most fails in your experience?
You know what? On most things that I have found, RAM is the most fallible. Like actually, not long ago, I don't know where it is now. Oh, I can't see it from here. But anyway, We had the first disk drive we ever got was a 2031, and it was not the one that looked like the 1541. It was the high profile model. And anyway, it hadn't worked in probably 30 years or more. So I didn't have another one to tinker on, but I said, well, I'm going to go at this. Anyway, it was RAM chips, and actually they were 2114 RAM chips, and I got them. I had a VIC 20 that smoked on me, but it didn't seem to damage much. But so I did steal. Basically, that became a parts thing, and I stole 2114 chips, and that VIC 20, which has 11 2114 chips, and I think 8 of them were good. Has saved that drive, which I think needed 2 or 3, and also a PET and maybe a 4040. So typically, I do find it is the RAM chips that fail. But actually, this is another thing about how I try not to get more stuff. But not long ago, there was a guy and he had a 64 listed, and it seemed like a quite reasonable price. Although it's like, I really don't need this. But I went and I got it, and while I was there, this one worked. He showed me that it worked. I said, okay, yeah, fine. Anyway, but he said, oh, by the way, I have 2 others that they don't work. You can just have them. I was like, oh, dear God, here we go again. So I did actually get and sit down and go through them. And one of them, it was a PLA chip, it was a RAM chip, and then there was a little support chip in the video area it was actually the one in the machine was a 7701, but it can be replaced with an 8701. So I did actually write back to this guy eventually and say, I got everything working. I think out of the 2 machines, or 3 machines, there were 2 good SID chips and 1 bad one. But typically, I would say, from what I found, there will be the odd, other chip that goes bad. But chances are, eventually, somehow or another, you're going to get to some RAM. And sometimes it can just be 1. That's all it takes. Like I got a disk drive, which of course I try not to get things. But I got a 4040, and of course I turned it on and came up with a code, and I said, oh, okay. So I swapped out that chip, and then it came up with another code. So I swapped out that chip, and then it came up and started flashing, and of course it was saying, you've got bad RAM. And I have not dug back into that one yet. 2114 is the color RAM of the 64-2. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yeah. You know what? A lot of the stuff is interchangeable. I remember being at the World of Commodore, and I had a disk drive or something there, and somebody came up and said, we need a 6502. And I said, oh, okay, well, hang on. I opened up the 1541 and said, there you go, try that. And they went away. Mind you, the 6510 is not switchable, but it's the 64 one, but certainly the VIC 20 would be the same. So a lot of them were, same thing, different variation. Yep. What else here? What is the chip? Oh, okay, got that. Okay, well, you think copy of the pet and the computer goes down now and in the coming year? Well, you know what? Right now, there's still a lot of people who kind of grew up on them and like, yeah, I want to relive those days. But eventually, all those people will be gone. And unless there is some, again, not just with the PET and the 64 and all the Commodore stuff, but unless there is some sort of young people who get involved, who carry on the tradition, then eventually, yeah, people will say, what's that thing?
It's kind of like young kids and antique furniture. They don't want it. They just want to get a shelf at IKEA.
And when they move, they just abandon the shelf because by then it's
Oh, yeah.
rickety, and when you try and move it, it tries to fall apart.
Yeah, and they've lost the key to take it apart anyway.
So I would suspect at some point there will come a time when there aren't so many people who grew up on them around who, and then they will hopefully they won't get scrapped. Hopefully there'll be enough interested museums and other places. So, but yeah, somebody said I should have a garage sale. Well, I don't think the people around here where I live would appreciate them as much. But I do think that as I get things working, that I will start to try to.
But before you have a garage sale, you're gonna let your friends have first dibs, right?
Oh, of course. Well, I think if I put a table out front, people would just come and say, "What is that thing?" Although there are some. I remember one time when I think I got my first chiclet pet, and actually my mother was headed down to Niagara on the Lake, so she actually picked it up. And this was some years ago, and I got it out of the car and I had it sitting on the hood, and a couple of people walking by, which is like, "Oh my word, that's a pet! I use them in school." But yeah, no, I will put these. I did actually. I guess the first crack in the armor was I did list some VIC 20 game cartridges of games that I really don't like. And there was a guy in the north who was interested, so I sent him a box, and now he's interested in some other 64 cartridge things that I will get packed up and send away. And yeah, and I suppose the other thing, because like I say, I have a lot of disk drives, a lot of things, a lot of parts, and it's certainly a lot cheaper to ship somebody a ROM chip from a 1541, assuming they know what's wrong, than send the whole drive, because the drives are heavy and big. And so I suspect they'll start to make parts that I know are working available to help others off in the middle of wherever, or even just the circuit board of a 1541. I mean, the 1541, it basically has a power supply, it has a drive mechanism, it has a circuit board. And the power supplies never seem to die, and they're heavy. The drive mechanisms, the heads can go bad, and then you're pretty screwed. But the circuit board, if it's working, it pretty much, you pop it in, you hook it up, and away you go. I never had the blue chiclet pet. I think it looks more interesting. Yeah, it does. Oh,
There are not many of those around.
hang on here.
Yeah, the blue pad is big pimpin'. That's OG. I think Stefan wants to get one.
Where are we? Oh, God. Well, it's funny. I know I have two of them,
Here,
but one of them is even. It's funny. It's rare.
Are you
That's our test.
let me ask you this.
Have I frozen?
Okay, let me ask you a basic. Ask you a basic
Yep.
question. When the 64, the Vic, no, let's go back to the Vic 20. The Vic 20 came out. What was the response from the pet guys who were used to having a monitor and a keyboard and a data set all in one? Now you had to go plug this into this, plug this into that, and it's like a cluster sometimes.
Oh,
Well-
there were lots of VICs plugged into TVs using channel 3 or 4 because they had that little,
Well,
thing.
let's face it. The original PET was not cheap with the monitor and such. And then, I mean, if you
No.
wanted to do anything else, it wasn't. And the keyboard at the beginning, the chiclet keyboard was pretty much unusable. So when they went to the real keyboard, that was when it kind of, well, now you need the data set that's plugged outside. What is it? I have an SFD 8050 4040, but maybe I should sell them because I never use them. And it's huge. Yes, I would take a blue PET, but I would have to sell a black and white one then. Oh, okay. Before I forget, back to the blue PET thing. I have one blue PET. It is very rare, and I've never figured out how the video works. But it doesn't have the nameplate on anymore. But I think it belonged to a university, and they supposedly you could convert the chiclet PETs to the full keyboard ones. And this looks like it was one of those where they basically, the middle part of the case, they took off, they put on one with the full size keyboard, and sticking out the back of it is some extra video circuitry that should be able to connect up to some sort of outputs. Because I figure what they did at the university is they had it where it could display for people to see. But the other one is indeed, it's a blue screen and it's nearly perfect. It has the oldest data set that I've ever seen.
Oh, really?
Unfortunately, from what I know, the data set, I really haven't dug into it, but it's not working. I don't think so.
The output was probably, if I remember, TVs of school age and university age. They had these big old TVs on the, big TVs, and they had a connector that looked like a CB antenna.
Yeah, that's the kind of connector that's on the back of the phone.
Back of the TV. So you could take that PET into a room and then put it on the big TV. It was probably just a video out. Because they had the video in, unless it was channel 3. I don't know. I think it was a video connection. But of course, back in the PET days, they never moved sound, or rarely moved sound onto anything because they didn't really seem to, they weren't teaching gaming programming. They were just teaching programming or word processing or what.
Well, the funny thing is, Richard, do you remember when they filmed that movie called Hide and Seek at Northern Secondary?
Yes.
And you were an extra.
Yes.
And I did the programming mostly.
Yes.
And I snuck some things in there, like it ended up being Bradley Helicopter Service,
remember.
and other such things. But anyway, but at one point, the girl in the show, Jessica, had to go up to the front to show something, and they did have. It was a PET, and it was connected to a bigger monitor. But for the life of me, I don't remember how. So I'm imagining that was stuff that was already in the school, but I just don't remember how it happened. But I know she had to go to the front to show something, and then the mysterious P1 made sure it worked properly, and she looked like a genius. When it was actually this outside computer force that had sorted it out. But I don't remember what they had connected to the PET. I know it was a big TV, but I don't remember how. I just never remember looking and saying, "Oh, look at that." But I know they used it in the movie. And they did not create it. It was somehow there.
So it must have been there.
What year did you do the programming for that film?
was probably 83.
And in 80, it's amazing that in 83 the pet for them is futuristic, right?
Yep. Oh, it was quite something. It was quite the operation. And oh yeah. Anyway, it's basically I used a room full of pets in the school, and they had some stuff done on the 64 that was done by a guy from Waterloo who was supposedly a genius, but he didn't know the 64. So he produced some stuff that I thought was pretty crap. But anyway, I was busy with the pet stuff, so they used the crap.
There's a question that whether or not you would camera or pan around and show some more of the pet room.
Yeah, can you pan your camera?
Oh, let me think about that. Oh. Da-da-da-da-da. Maybe I can get out the way here.
Oh, yeah.
There is. Oh, that's an original pet box up there that the
Nice.
pet came in. Oh, it's almost like working backwards here. Hang on. And then, of course, I have tons of magazines and stuff. And then, oh, there's a shirt over there where I can't even see. There's the one in the middle there, the House of Computers shirt.
Which said, what is it? Something about petting.
Peek but don't poke. Peek but don't poke.
But don't poke.
Look, no, pan a little bit. No, see
Huh?
the stack
Where
of drives? Right there.
Oh yeah. There's that pile has 21 in it right now. There were 22. I moved one.
Wow.
But as I move around here, that Comrex monitor that was on the TPUG magazine picture. That was on the cover of the magazine.
I like Comrex. I like that brand.
But then over here, oh, there's an old print. That's our original printer.
Oh wow.
The what is it, 2022? Yeah, with the tractor feed. And then going over here, there's now we're getting into light trouble here.
I see a
Just
blue.
a second. Just a second. Yep, that's a small screen. Oh, where'd we go? Am I on the blue one? I can't see well.
Yeah.
That's the one that came out of the box up there on the mantle. That's where that one came from. It's the number, which is handwritten on the box. It's the same serial number as what that is. And then if we move farther over, right there in the corner, it's in the dark, sorry, but that's the blue screen one with the big monitor. Or not the big monitor, the big keyboard. And what is that? Oh, that's that one there. I don't know if you can tell, but the bezel around the monitor is broken. And then we're back to the thing. Oh, there's another, there's a Commodore phone and another chiclet pet. And then what's up? Oh, that's the Comrex monitor. That's a box from the little tiny 64 thing. So anyway, and then I see it's hard to see and do this. Like there, where am I? Okay, see there's some more stuff lower to the ground. And I'm trying to. Oh, okay. Oh, the one here. It's funny. The one right in front. It's hard to see. It was through a flood. That belonged to Gordon Mahaffey, Richard.
Oh, that was in Mahaffey's house basement. Yep.
Yeah, and it flooded. And
Yes,
it's the only one. It's the only one I have that has, like, everything was always upgraded to Basic 4. Everything got upgraded. That's the only one that has the little sticker on the outside of the bezel that says upgraded to 4.0. I've never seen that sticker before.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, updated to 4.0. Yeah, the only one I've ever seen on any machine. But they were all, all the 4032 or the 2001s. Everybody upgraded.
4.2.
Stefan said the most beautiful is the first one. The strange data set with the white key on it.
Oh yeah, that's the blue one. Yeah, that was one. I came in that box. Um, Came in the box that is sitting up there. The box is it's okay, but it's not. It's got the odd little issue about it. So if ever I was going to sell the blue pet, I would. It also has the original packing stuff inside. I would ship it in that, but I would put the whole thing in a whole other box. So I'd probably have to get a special box made that's just a little bit bigger.
Wow.
And because the original packaging it's not styrofoam. It's some other funny thing that almost looks like it was kind of liquid and molten and in plastic, and then they kind of like got it all juiced up and then stuck it on. But I'm not sure how they did it. But anyway, it's all in there. It's in there.
Hacking foam.
Stefan says I have a 3032 box with a Commodore logo and Braunschweig, Germany, factory packing.
Oh yeah.
Is that correct way of saying
Blue,
it? Huh?
I think blue printing.
Braunschweig? Blue red
Yep.
paint, sorry.
Yeah, there's no styrofoam in this. I don't know what it is. It's some weird thing. Just another blast from the past, which I know I brought out before. There we are in the light. A disc notcher.
There you go.
Woohoo. Anyway, lots of stuff, lots of books, lots of things, lots of stuff. It's funny though, people always say, why do you keep all the stuff that's broken? And just recently I was working on I got the 64 working. And then I went to the 1541 and it worked, but then it had the flippy door and it was weird. And I looked and I could not figure out why is this thing, it would pop out, it wouldn't stay in place, and it was all. So I knew I had a bad drive mechanism of the same kind in an envelope that I had marked, bad, whatever. And I brought it out and I looked, and sure enough, all that was wrong was this little piece of metal that came out at a right angle where the end of the flippy thing went. It was bent over just ever so slightly. So all I had to do was take a screwdriver and just give it just the littlest tweak to open up a space of maybe 2 millimeters, and then the end of the door went in perfectly and it's fine. But without that broken thing or another one like it to look at, I would have been like, oh, there's something wrong here. I guess I'll have to, try and take the flippy thing apart. See just somehow. And I guess what had happened is at some point it got banged or something, so it got bent in just a bit, and then the flippy thing wouldn't go in properly. And it was literally just the end of the flippy thing. It had to go into the right hole. But if it was bent over just a little bit, it would, but then it would slip out. So the drive was perfect, but then it wasn't. Anyway, so yeah, never deplete your spares. Always keep parts. You never know.
Interesting enough, the place I used to work for, which was a labor union, is now into their second month of trying to recover from what I believe is a ransomware cyber attack.
Whoa.
And I used to work in the IT department. I'm sure glad I don't work there now. But all I can say about that is we never really had to do a whole lot of disaster recovery.
No.
But we probably should have done more. But all I can say is, in my opinion, the disaster recovery for this organization would not pass many auditors' smell tests on, because, it's business, right? Just think about the companies that had 2 offices and all their backups were everything operating was in one side of the World Trade Center and all their backups are on the other side.
What?
Oh yeah, there were companies.
Oh, yeah.
There were data centers that had stuff in both towers, thinking, well, that's good enough. It wasn't actually.
Is that the untold story? How much data was lost in the?
I don't remember which company or what. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I do.
So while you're thinking there,
Oh, yep.
Stephanie was asking about the CBM2s. Actually, I've never had, I did have a couple of B128s that somebody talked me out of. But once again, it was kind of, I had a weak moment. But I do have the Porsche style 8296, and it just can't. It's here. It just, you can't see it because it's buried and stuff. And basically, it's an 8032 with the extra memory. I've never even opened it up. It works just fine, and it has the separate keyboard, and you can shift the monitor and tweak things around. And I like the looks of them. I just haven't. I haven't found them to. I've never had somebody call and say, "Hey, I've got a thing." Now I know that Steve Gray, who's part of TPUG, he does all kinds of stuff with the B machines, and he has a thing on Facebook for the B machines, and he's still making things to go with them. So yeah, they were good. You know what? In some ways, sadly, they were kind of like the Plus 4 and the C16, whatever. They were fine. Like actually, for a while, when I worked at TPUG, when Commodore sent us one, I used it in the copy room to hook up to some 4040s and back up discs. But one thing I did find that the IEEE port couldn't handle nearly as many drives as the PET could. I think it could only handle 4. Whereas the PET, you just keep on hooking them up. But anyway, so I do have the one Porsche style thing. Oh, what do we got here? But I haven't had it on quite a while. At some point, I should open it up and look inside. I have no idea what it looks like in there. No clue. And I haven't ever had any of the like the smaller 8050s and other things that had the shorter ones, the more modern ones. I never had any of those. I have not.
Stefan asks, Canada was a huge CBM2 BP series country. Do you like the CBM2 series? Because I don't see any new style ones.
Oh, well, that's what I just said. I have the one that it's the same style, but it's not a CBM2. It's an 8296. And it's buried behind magazines here. So it's right over here, but it cannot be seen because it's got a Commodore 64 on the top. It's got a couple other circuit boards on the top of that. In front of that are a whole bunch of books, a Commodore 64, a box with God knows, like a storage bin with God knows what, and then a stack of rather delicately piled books and magazines.
Oh,
I didn't read the whole thing, but there's an article from like years ago about the data center, the data center story. Anyway, it led to many companies, international companies, doing things like having, data centers from the United States backed up in like Sweden or Switzerland, or like when they had, and there's like one of the companies I seem to remember, it had a ship as part of their logo. And damned if I can remember, but I'm pretty sure they were one of the companies that after the World Trade Center essentially spread their international backups all over the world so that they would never be.
I know, yes. Yep. And Stefan here saying, yes, the S key. It's funny. I don't believe the SK designation was ever used over here, but I know it was in Europe. They did have a separate keyboard, and that was a beautiful thing because you could pull it out and hold it in your lap and stuff. But of course, the unfortunate thing is when you have a keyboard that can be separated, it will get lost. And I have had people write to me saying, I have an 8296 and the keyboard got lost. What can I do? And really, I generally tell them, look for one. You might find one, but probably the best thing to do is just watch for a whole other machine. And regardless of what's working and what's not, get it and hope that the keyboard works, and then you have extra parts.
Oh, I was going to ask, is there a complete archive of the TPUG magazine somewhere?
Oof.
That was done online at one time, way back.
Yeah, I think somebody has done that where you can go and find them, and they're all PDFs, and you can look through them.
Do you know where?
By the TPUG website.
So it might be tpug.ca of all things. But other people, other archivist people have done things like that too. I think a lot of the old episode editions of many magazines are hiding online and PDF'd
Okay.
and that you can get. And I guess they were scanned and PDF'd and yep.
Coming back to here's a link. Paste. Imagine that, tpug.ca/archives. Who
Thank
would have
you.
thought it could be so clear?
There it
And then
is.
it goes back. Oh my
They
goodness.
just got the newsletters.
The first Torpet in 1980, actually called a TPUG News. Heavenly days.
The best of Corpet. Diskette. Oh, cool. Oh, cool.
Yep.
Okay. I just downloaded the D64 file. Cool.
I must admit, the one thing oh my goodness, I just pulled up one of the TPUG magazines, and it's got the advertisement with PAL Power 60 with Butterfield, Templeton, and
Oh
Punter
yeah,
wearing the football uniforms.
the Pro Line team.
I gotta say, the covers of the TPUG magazine, if nothing else, were vastly superior to the cover of any Torped.
They were.
There were some really nice covers.
But mind you, the best covers were the Transactor.
Yes, they were. They absolutely were.
Transact.
While Carl Hilden was involved,
Yes.
they were works of art. Actually, one of the reasons I've gathered all these disk drives is at some point I do have this dream. There was one cover on the Transactor that had basically Carl Hilden sitting at a desk, and the desk, I guess it had a pet, and then he was literally surrounded by drives and things and stuff all stacked up on the floor, on the sides, there was a printer on the top, but they weren't all 4040s. There was an assortment. I'd have to look at it again. But I always thought I can recreate that, and I can get Carl to come over here and sit in front of it.
That's cool.
But certainly with the dual drives and the single drives and other things, I probably don't have the exact configuration of what was in the drawing, but we could come pretty close.
There's an interesting article from TPUG issue number 2, going back to that question. I haven't read it recently, but I remember it. And it's called Computer Orphans, Bargains or Paperweights.
Imagine that.
Amazing how old becomes potentially new.
Paperweight.
And that was, are they bargains or paperweights? And that was from, oh my gosh, what month is this?
That's hilarious.
I don't know. It was the second, I think, TPUG magazine. Although they started counting in a funny way. It says issue number 24, but I think they added in the Torpets. Oh yes. I don't know if I'm going to PTSD or fond memories looking at the masthead of this magazine. I'm not sure. I think I'll just.
I don't know whether to laugh or cry.
Yeah, or drink. Well,
Oh, I was gonna make a reference to Star Wars, about Transactor. Who am I quoting? And Transactor, that is a name I haven't heard in a very long time. Do you remember
Sorry, I couldn't
Obi-Wan?
hear.
Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Remember he says, my dad says the name Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he goes, Obi-Wan Transactor. That is a name I haven't heard in a very long time.
Yeah. Oh, do you know him? Of course I do. He's me. Yeah.
Me? What? No.
Yeah.
But look, thank you guys for
Look at
great
this.
night.
Oh my
I don't know.
God.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Looking at the first TPUG news. Win a prize. Name our newsletter. Oh my. I will come back to
Very
this.
good. All right, so Dr. Obsoleto, are we are wrapping up?
It's getting to be bedtime.
Yeah, but I want to
It
win a
is.
prize.
Well, you get to name the TPUG newsletter.
Okay. One last
Here's the
question.
message.
One last question. What?
Yep.
Okay, so put your TPUG hats on. This is the last question.
Yep.
Does the original TPUG office still exist if I want to make a pilgrimage?
No,
No, I don't.
What?
I mean the original one was, of course, I never saw it when it ran out of Chris Bennett's garage, but the original one at 1912A Avenue Road, the building was torn down and rebuilt.
Oh no. Okay.
It was actually
Yep. Go
What?
ahead. There
it
is
had some cool stuff. Basically, the reason it was good for TPUG is it started off in one room, but then you could, like, there were other rooms that you could just say, well, we'd like to use this one. And so, you could just make, as the club got bigger, they could just say, oh, we need another thing.
We need another room. We need this. I spent a few evenings reading the old Torpet Megs and TPUG newsletters. What was so awesome about that era is everyone was so knowledgeable and submitted articles to issues. The newsletters were the internet, so to speak, for other pet owners. I would have loved to have been born a few years earlier just to experience the pet in its prime. Thanks for putting this together tonight. You know what it was? The big difference now between that and now is when you went to school and you had a pet or whatever it was in front of you, they didn't teach you how to use it. They taught you how to program it. You took basic programming courses in high school and various other things. When you take computer courses, to my understanding in school right now, it's basically operating software and how to type, keyboarding and how to use it. So back in the day, we had computer programming and computer science classes in grades, I don't know, 10, 11, and 12, 9, 11 and 12, whichever it was. And
Well, I mean, they didn't, when we first got there, they had a few pets, but
right.
then they started to get rooms full of them.
You get the labs. So they were actually teaching people how to program and think and logically, and put a program together. I don't believe that is taught anymore until you get to a college or university at this point in any fashion, unless you're, and that's why there were so many people who just kind of made stuff up and figured stuff out, and took great pride in sharing it. It was almost like a bragging right?
Well,
Hey, I got an article in the Torpet.
Well, they were.
Well,
it was basically-
Millisoft, yeah, thank you, Millisoft. That's really a wonderful comment that you made. I believe that as well, that it was like the internet of the time. You know, these user groups were the lifeblood. You know, and I could sit back and read these magazines and get lost. You know, I keep some of these magazines around and I time travel in my head and I pretend like it's 1982 again. I swear. I just like, I sit there and just say, let me just suspend disbelief and pretend like it's 1982. You know?
You
So,
needed you needed DeLorean.
yeah, literally, I need a DeLorean. Really,
Well,
you know?
the other thing was, I remember the first time I discovered, and when you did a program, you could program in cursor movement.
Oh,
And I said, oh, like, you know, in a quote mode, you say you want it to be over this many spaces and down, whatever, you did that. I remember I showed this listing to a guy who really thought he was, you know, hot shit. And he just said, well, you didn't do this. I said, what do you mean? He said, what's all this stuff? I said, those are cursor movements. He said, well, you couldn't have done that. I said, no, you just haven't found them yet. And really, it was, you know, people show up at the meeting and say, hey, look what I found, look what I found, look what I, and they do a presentation about what they done or how they did something a little differently or tweaked something or whatever.
Yep.
And but yeah, but you know, if like until I started using those cursor movements, I had no idea what the heck they were. They were just that pain in the ass thing that came up when you got stuck in quote mode and you went to do something. You're like, what the hell? How do I get out of this?
You know, if it
so just
wasn't for
good.
learning BASIC, I learned a program many years later, not that many years later, at Ryerson, when it was Ryerson, called Rex. And it was so much like BASIC that I was able actually to write a program that automated my entire job for me. And if it hadn't been for learning in Rex, if it hadn't been for learning BASIC, it was so much the same that I was able to actually make great use of that transferable knowledge. And again, programming is it's a way of thinking. It's a logical way of thinking through steps, and it can be very helpful in other parts of
What were you using Rex on? What systems?
VM, virtual machines. Like it was a mainframe when such things existed. We actually had 6,000 tapes in a library. Like, and I mean, you know, the ones like you see in the movies. If you would like to see
Where the arm goes up and grabs it.
no, we had to put them in manually. If you would like to see the computer room I worked in, pick up a copy or stream a copy of FX2, because they used the computer room that I worked in at Ryerson as supposedly FX2 with Brian Dennehy, and I can't remember who else, but they used our computer room that was supposedly the police, you know, data center for that movie.
Oh.
So if you ever want to see what the movie looks like for a couple of scenes, FX2.
FX2. 1991 American action thriller.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
It was there was FX before it. That's
Here.
right. Thus the number 2.
Okay, here it is. Here, can you confirm this image? Let's see.
Oh, sorry. Yep, that is in the room. That was right behind our main, the main greens, the green screens behind them.
Yeah.
Yep, that was the green screens, and we actually had the coolest thing I ever saw back in those days. We had a 4-panel split plasma orange screen, one that connected to each mainframe that allowed you to switch to any one of the mainframes by selecting a button on it or whatever in a key. The coolest thing. It was the first flat screen I ever saw. And that was yep, that is from the movie, and that was at our main console where that was everything ran from there.
Oh, I gotta watch this movie now. FX2.
FX2.
Well, just thank you guys very much for joining us, Bradley Brothers, everybody
No, no.
else. And then let everybody know next month our special guest that I'll be hosting is Leonard Trammell. So, yeah, Leonard's coming and it's going to be a tell-all. And he said he's going to answer any question I ask. So, that'll be a good time. So, check out the links that everybody posted above. The TPUG archives is pretty cool. That'll be some nice reading material at night. You know,
And that'll cure insomnia.
what's that?
That'll cure insomnia.
Well, okay. And then I gotta check out the Best of Torpet D64. That looks cool.
Yeah.
And then check out, these pet games that UC sent. Here, I'll copy it again. I'll give it to everybody at the bottom here. So thank you, everybody. Bradley Brothers,
Very good.
John, Philosoph, Stefan, Jessica.
Sorry for missing the first half an hour, but I got a wonderful
That's
vehicle.
okay. We had a great night.